Commissioner Morath.
Here. Commissioner Hayes did contact me, letting me know that he had a family emergency tonight.
Thank you.
All right. Citizen participation. Anybody that would like to speak during citizen participation? No? All right, we'll close citizen participation and move on to approval of the Planning Commission minutes from November 8th.
Motion to approve minutes as presented.
Second. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on to amend site plan to accommodate outdoor events and other site improvements at LD's Barbecue located at 2511 Main Street, RA 2702000001, Leon Davis, application 2021-10. Tim?
I did send the staff report to Leon, and I'm sure he's busy. So I think we'll just proceed, and I think we'll be able to wrap it up, but if not, we'll just have to table it. But essentially, this is a continuation of a previous matter. You previously looked at the conditional use approval for the outdoor events, and that was approved. And it was subject to the site plan and plan of operation being, approved. And at that time, he had the 3 adjoining properties, and then we had him merge the 3 properties into one. So he has one parcel now, and this proposed site plan is included in the staff report. And it basically shows exactly what is there in terms of, the stage and, the parking. The one thing I would note, though, is he's showing a proposed pavilion, and that's not anything that he wants to construct right away. So that's not part of the site plan approval. Actually, his business. He's wanting to close one of the entrances on the south side. Comments, questions, I can answer them, but again, it's pretty straightforward in terms of what this.
So the biggest thing I had a question about was just a site plan. We've got 2 sheds that are on the property, I believe, including the existing building. I feel like the pavilion's not part of anything we're but in any discussions that you've had with him, is there any concern about the amount of buildings that are going to be on this single parcel now?
So obviously, the sheds are there for, just storage of doing stuff. But at some point, may have to come back with a proposal for a planned development district that would allow more buildings than what would otherwise be allowed. So I think for that.
I have a question, if you're done. I see on the plan where they're going to propose a stage, at least what I think is a stage for entertainment. Is that stage is out in the front of the building facing their driveway entry? Yep. And they've eliminated the driveway to the south, correct?
Correct.
My question is, if they're going to have live entertainment with a stage, are the people listening going to be out on the other side of the bollards or the control fence that's there? Because I hope he does great business, but if you get a lot of people standing out there, are they going to have a problem with traffic coming in and out of that driveway?
So maybe you can help me out here. Obviously, this is, something that's been going on for a while.
Yeah, 40. This is he's been coming to us for a number of years now for the music events that he has on Tuesday nights. And what he has already done is parked one of his vehicles in front of that area where he wants to eliminate that entrance to his facility. So there hasn't been any traffic to begin with. So there hasn't been issues at this point.
I understand. I'm talking about the main driveway on the Main Street. The main driveway on Main Street where it says culvert, and they've got the stage on the front end of the building directly opposite the driveway. And what my concern is if they get a lot of people out there in the parking lot, are they going to have a problem with traffic coming in?
He uses it during bike nights, and they already have the traffic pattern down, and that's, shown on his special event plans. They've been doing that and using that stage area as already.
I just thought it'd be best to mention it now before we found a problem later, that's all. So, we need a motion then? And I will make a motion to approve the site plan for the subject property, except for the proposed pavilion, which will be reviewed at a later date.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Moving on to petition to waive the buffer yard requirements pursuant to section 510.119E of the zoning regulations for property off of South Executive Drive, RA 498700003, MP Systems, Inc., applicant, application 2021-40.
I think we might have a number of, agents online. Obviously, they can jump in if there's any comments, questions. But essentially, this is obviously a piece of property that is currently being developed. It's been, rated, and, they are proposing to, waive a portion of the buffer yard requirements along the south and the west property boundary lines. And they provided, a grading plan along with a number of, cross sections. And, scroll down. Actually, it's part of the page down. So, in particular, we'll start with, cross-section A. That's the furthest one to the south. And there you can see, there's a substantial difference between the adjoining property owner or properties to the west and the grade of the, yard. So in that area, obviously, it would make a lot of sense not to require the buffer yard. But when you move further to the south, further north, the grades kind of actually come to an equal point, and then at some point further to the north, then this property is a little bit higher than what's to the west. And they are proposing a solid 6-foot fence, and I have the dimensions as part of my staff report. So they are proposing to do some buffer yard along that area, and along the south side, again, on the west side, it's very steep. And then as you go further to the east, then it becomes a little bit more level again. And there again, they are proposing that 6-foot.
Be able to grasp this a little better, there's probably, about a 40-foot difference?
On cross-section A, yes.
Okay.
35, roughly. Now, to the north, along the parking lot, a good portion of that is actually abutting the multifamily project that is currently under construction. And maybe, Eileen, if you go to the previous page. You can see, multifamily project area, obviously that's under construction. So whenever you have an industrial up against a multifamily or residential property, there has to be a buffer yard. And when this was reviewed, at the time, there was a dense wood line, and as part of the site construction, that was removed. Now we have to replace it. And essentially, it's about 300 feet, and then they would have to do a buffer yard that would equal a 0.3 opacity level. So that's something that has to be installed as part of this.
Can I ask a question? You made a statement, we have to replace it. That the village has to replace it, or the contractor?
Theoretically, the contractor. Yes, they.
Put the jar back in that can of worms.
So with that, basically, I think that's what the petition is. So if there's any comments, questions of me or the applicant?
I don't know if there's any questions. I'd make a motion to approve the request to waive the buffer yard requirements pursuant to section 510.119E of the zoning code based on findings that grades of the adjoining parcels are significantly different, but not in these specified 3 areas noted in the staff report.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. A discussion related to potential revisions to the zoning code and comprehensive plan with regard to the downtown transition area described in the village's comprehensive plan.
So this is a third meeting at which we've been talking about this idea, and again, it's a proposal that would affect both the comprehensive plan and the resulting zoning code. And for each of the previous meetings, we kind of worked on some general concepts in terms of what this would look like. And we're at a point now where I put that into an ordinance format, showing what sections would be created to create the new zoning district, and then how that would affect the rest of the zoning code in terms of development standards, buffer yard requirements, landscaping, and things like that. I can go through these section by section if you want to.
I think first I'm hoping that all commissioners have read their material, right? Are there any questions that you have in particular with Tim? Feel a need that we need to go through section by section?
I just had one question in regards to, I don't believe we have to go through section by section.
Nor do I. It's the third rendition of it. I think we're really good there.
But I did have a question in regards to, item H on page 2, where it gives a listing of, requirements applicable to all zoning districts. My question is, these can't be made, I say this, some existing properties don't meet these requirements. So what happens? You see what I'm saying? There's some, well, I'm just saying there's right around that square area, those are platted 100 years ago. And some of these lots in these areas are not going to meet the criteria 1 through 14 on section H. They may miss 1 or 2. I'm sure they'll meet some others, but that was my question in regards to that. Because if we approve it, and we could run into some malfunctions down the road.
That's a really good question. A lot of these standards is kind of a mix between the TR8 zoning district and the central business district. With regard to the minimum lot width, it's shown as 60 feet for residential and 70 feet for non-residential. Those were the standards that we just recently adopted for the TR8 zoning district. The setbacks are very similar to that. So essentially what we tried to do was to mirror in a lot of instances the TR8 development standards in terms of lot size and so on and so forth. But if there is an existing parcel, they are still considered a non-conforming parcel, and as long as they can meet the development standards, they can certainly be developed.
This is for development and not necessarily an existing structure, property, or,
Well, I mean, it applies to everything that's existing and new. But if you're existing and you don't comply, then you're, grandfathered in,
okay,
quote unquote.
I'll share this with Tim later then, not to hold everything up.
Not holding anything up.
But
But I think the biggest thing to really keep in mind with anything we do within the village, we have a number of unique parcels. We're gonna continue to always try and create the best baseline as we can for any of those development standards or anything else of that sort. And there's just going to be some unique. When those unique situations come up, then we can address them at that point, but at least we have this as a base to start from.
And I understand that, and that makes sense. I just want to make sure people understand that they're not shut out just because their property was platted 120 years ago. You know what I'm saying? Because my survey, my property here misses 4 of the 14 items that are on the list.
Or you're gonna have to sell that to me for a very low cost.
To clarify, so if they are looking to do small-scale retail or use, that would still be allowed even though they're on a non-conforming lot?
Correct.
Okay.
So the lot could be non-conforming and the building could be non-conforming because it's too tall or it's too close or whatever. As long as the use is permissible, then it's fine. You can swap out a single family for a restaurant, office, whatever.
Not worse than the non-conforming location, correct? So they couldn't enlarge a building that maybe takes up too much
Correct.
area on the lot, or they couldn't enlarge a building that would encroach on a setback that they're already in.
So this isn't ready for action yet?
Well, my next question though too is, in this whole process and what you've given as far as the guidelines, parameters for this, especially, I guess it would be page 5 of the ordinance, is this clear enough? And going into, it was page 5, and also back to page 4, is this all clear enough for staff as far as any kind of questions coming forward? Or do we really truly rely on Tim just being our kind of go-to if this stuff comes up?
So basically what this is an ordinance that is amending your current zoning code. And it's taking language and adding it, and then it's also modifying existing tables. And what I try to do is not to recreate the entire table, but just to show those areas of the table that are going to be amended. So what will happen is the codifying, that you've hired is going to take this content and modify your current code so that it all fits together. That's the question.
Anything else?
Unless there's, any other comments, questions, essentially the only thing that's missing is the copy of the map, the zoning map, showing the new parcels that are going to be shown, the CBD, the C classification. And the other thing that we have to do before we actually do the ordinance is amend the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan does show and talk about this transitional district, but we would have to show where that area would be located on the future land use map. That's something that we can tackle at the next month's meeting, and that should be fairly straightforward.
Guess we're moving on to recommendation of future agendas. Listed here. Have anything else? We had discussion regarding the driveway, areas for homes. Hell had a new home built in the area. Have the sidewalk start widening or the driveway start widening at the sidewalk. Do you ever have any changes or definition of what we were doing with that?
No, that issue came up at some point when we were talking about the driveways. I'm not sure that we actually resolved it. I'm pretty certain that we don't have any specific language to address it.
And I know that a suggestion was made that when a developer came into the village to start platting homes on properties, that they push those buildings back a little bit to give more room for a driveway to move, to be able to get your vehicles in to the garage where it's situated on the building. Because the problem that Steve Bartle had was that when he pulled into his driveway, the house was so close with that double garage, they couldn't make the turn, and they couldn't, without going on the grass. And according to the village codes, they couldn't make the driveway any wider. That's where the malfunction was. And we, at that meeting, we came up with a solid resolution, more or less, between us, that we were going to ask the developers to move those buildings back a little bit on the property. If there was going to be a problem such as that. Some homes just have a straight driveway through, there's no problem.
The one that I was referring to is in our ordinance identifies back to turn that driveway for width, and that's the section I'm asking.
I'm not sure how that worked. I don't know if, I don't think any action was ever taken on it.
So this is not an agenda item. This was honestly a question for Tim to see if we could maybe put it on, and then we'll have a discussion about it. How's that sound?
A future agenda item.
We can do that.
I thought we resolved that, because he laid down concrete, both of that for grass.
They're like concrete block that they set in gravel.
Yeah, they're not permanent concrete.
The biggest reason I ask about it is that I'm just driving around and identifying that there are a lot of properties within the village area where they have and this time of year, you can see a lot of mud on driveways. Yeah. And a lot of mud running out into the roadway because of that odd 8-foot section. That's why I'm asking about it.
Makes perfect sense.
I believe we were talking about possibly allowing it in some situations if you have a 3-car garage to allow a 3-car to come forward depending on the setback of the house.
Sounds like it might be something for a future agenda. It'd be a great one to talk about.
Yep.
Our next meeting is going to be January 10th at 6:30. Make a motion to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.